too, John, I think.
All right. Good morning. It is September 17th, Friday, 9 a.m. I'd like to call this personnel meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Our first order of business is approval of previous meetings minutes.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to citizens' comments. We don't have any citizens in the audience. Did we receive any comments that need to be entered into the record?
No, sir.
All right, moving on along. Item 4, old business. We have 3 items. We'll start with A, update on wage and compensation analysis. So I'll hand that over to staff.
All right. I have provided to you all a rather small, I know, but busy schedule that shows preliminary numbers for the 3 options for implementation of the potential adjustments. I will say we are still going through employee by employee. This is a very deliberate and slow process because we want to make sure that every single person is looked at and every single recommendation is looked at and evaluated. But here you can see at a high level what the adjustments would be depending on the implementation option. We talked about last month, it does feel like last month about the current range penetration option as something that it would be the option that best aligns with the compensation philosophy that City Council had discussed earlier this summer. There's a separate option very similar to the penetration, but would be capped at midpoint. You can see the differentials in terms of the total impact to adjustments. And then the step placement just by tenure, which we would be, we're evaluating as a proposal to apply for public safety, police and fire. If the city decides to do a combination of an implementation phase, step placement for the public safety, police and fire, and a different implementation philosophy for the other departments, we would have to adjust the numbers accordingly. We have had a meeting with the Chair of Ways and Means yesterday to go over these results. They will be included. We will be discussing this at Ways and Means next Tuesday with the rest of the group. Make sure that the recommendations from this committee align with the rest of council, and then just start thinking about implementation timelines and priorities as we move forward. So these are, I just want to say, preliminary numbers. You can see here the pay plan type. As we explained before, general involves everybody at City Hall, building department, recreation, public works, and also admin and salary staff from police and fire. And then fire and police, that speaks for itself, I guess. Depending on the options, you can see on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th column, the number of employees receiving adjustments per department. And then the total implementation cost, which again may change, not dramatically from what we have now, but may change somewhat.
John, is there a recommendation from these 3? I kind of feel like there probably is.
Well, can I touch base on that for a second?
Yeah.
And that when I talk to my staff and my employees, I don't ask them to do the minimum, if that makes sense. I mean, let's go out there and do the
I think
the least amount we can do just to get by.
I think you cross that one off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
just so that y'all, just to make it clear, the
Right.
bring employee salaries to the minimum is already embedded in the other.
Correct.
In the
Okay.
other.
Yep.
So we wouldn't be adding that on top of whatever the
No.
total recommendation
Correct.
would be.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at the current range penetration. There is an argument to be made as a, to look at capping it at midpoint. One of the discussions that we talked about with council early on was looking at the positions and tenure positions that we have more issue with recruiting and retention. And maybe assigning more dollars to that than we would for folks that are at the higher end of their range.
I'm trying to help you narrow the gap here on what we're dealing with. So really the only two discussion lines that we're looking at is the current range presentation capped at midpoint, or the current range presentation, which does not cap at midpoint, right? So we can exclude the other ones, the two lower cost options, you would likely just exclude, and we have a discussion around those other two. Fair?
So I think that for public safety, there is a desire to look at tenure rather than current position, because it addresses some issues that exist with perceived inequality, irregularities among people in the same position. So this would help us start fresh, get everybody up to a certain point in the step plan based on tenure, and then moving forward.
Okay, so
it would be
I'm
possible.
actually trying to help with a little bit of messaging here. Right. This is not a cost savings measure for the city, right? This is a do the right thing thing. I personally am tired of hearing that we underpay our police and fire and all that stuff, right? So we're looking at and looking for recommendations, I think, from the city that moves forward to Ways and Means, that we're in all likelihood going to support good recommendations that do the right thing, that, you know, increase substantially the budget amounts of monies for the right actions, so that we can put this behind us and have a good plan moving forward. Fair?
Yep.
So John, I don't know if we need to do anything with that other than, you know, my recommendation would be to narrow the focus on those two center ones and have a recommendation around it.
I'll go back to I think where we landed last time. And I guess I'll tell you what I'm going to end up saying, which is, I don't know that this committee needs to make a recommendation to Ways and Means. Because as I recall, the recommendation that we made without a formal motion last time was we want to do the most we can for our employees that makes sense within our budget. And what the specific option is called doesn't necessarily matter. And I'm kind of getting that from you. It's not necessarily, except for the one that's new minimums. Right, good point.
Right.
Like, we can easily strike that one. That's too low. We need to do more than that. How much more we do, and I guess it's hard for us to make. We're looking at numbers here from a philosophical standpoint. Yes, we want to make sure that all of our employees feel valued, that everyone has competitive pay. We want to pay particular attention to those that have the really challenging recruiting issues, which we know public safety is always, for the foreseeable future, will have very challenging recruiting. So the fact that you've singled those out on here, I'm glad you did that. Thank you, by the way, for this layout, because this is really helpful to see impact. Because what you see is there's not much difference from a budget perspective from the full range penetration to the capped at midpoint when we look at public safety alone. It's relative. It's essentially the same impact from a dollar standpoint. Then you can look at who gets the most impact. The midpoint gets the employees that are the most impacted. But I guess for us, it still feels like a discussion for Ways and Means more so than here, because the message from this body is we want to elevate salaries as much as we can for everybody, obviously fairly. And I guess maybe that's what you're asking. The question is, what do we think is the most fair approach? And I'm sorry, I'm just kind of rambling a little bit. I'm trying to get to, like, what do you need to hear from us different than what we've already said before?
John, I'd make one other comment to that, and I'm making this comment as much for the employees as for us sitting here. This is not a point in time action. This is to have process and policy supporting sound people management going forward, right? Right, because I don't think anyone should view this as, well, you know, we think we have a problem, we're going to fix it right now, but we haven't thought it through well enough that this has a life. I mean, you know, this was an attempt to correct a lack of people policy that has hurt us. And, you know, we're close to getting it done, actually.
Just a couple of questions. I agree. I don't think that there is anything that I'm doing for this group moving forward. I'm giving you a little bit more information
Sure.
than we did last time. Showing you the impact. These numbers do not include fully loaded costs. So that is something that we'll be presenting to Ways and Means.
Okay, this is just salary.
This is just salary
Okay.
impact. So that's just something to
Mhm.
take into consideration. When it
So at
comes
40% on top of that.
on top of that, correct. Then the step placement option, the last one in your schedule there does have a larger impact for police and fire. So when you look at the total impact of 131 compared to all the other options, this would be more impactful to those two departments as compared to the others. So that way, that's the reason I'm saying that it may look different. The implementation philosophy may look different for those two departments versus everybody else, because they would be using a completely separate, a different pay philosophy. They would be in a step plan, and the others would be in a
But
more open range.
correct me if I'm wrong, if I were looking by department, some departments are incredibly small, some are large, right? Your recruitment and retention issues are much larger in police and fire. Your tenure is much lower in police and fire. And we have 6 openings in the police department right now. And I'm not sure how many in the fire department, but
Fully staffed.
Fully
for
staffed.
first
Fully
time in
staffed.
Several
Yeah.
years.
Fully
First
So-
time of that.
when we're not just trying to solve a salary action for current employees right now. We're trying to set the tone and tenor for this city's ability to recruit the best people into those roles. And I think we all need to say that and support that, because we do have employees that are going to fall way above the midpoint, right? So the intention here is not to take those that are way above the midpoint and automatically cause salary increases for things that you're going to evaluate on an individual basis and then implement on an individual basis at your level without needing to involve council, correct?
Correct.
That's all I got.
But just point of clarity for the public as much as anybody else. This is about, this particular decision is a point in time decision
It is.
versus the ongoing
It is.
policy that we've already discussed, which is the hybrid
Yeah.
step tenure
Yeah.
plus performance.
I think that implementing this would position the city in a good place moving forward to make sure that everybody in this city family is well compensated within market and at competitive rates. And then moving forward, it just be maintaining that in a sustainable way for years to come.
Yep. Thank
That's all
you.
I have.
Perfect. Good job.
This is very helpful, by the way. I'm glad we'll have this for with.
I know it's a little small, I apologize.
No, it's good.
but it is a lot.
Yeah.
We
You don't
got
want to
him
squeeze
in
it on 8.5
classes.
by 11.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to next item, discussion of upcoming vacancies in boards and commissions and consideration of reappointments and new applicants. And Desiree sent with the packet list of the applications in our emails.
Yes. And while we're looking, if I may, we have 2 openings for the Board of Zoning Appeals and 4 for the Planning Commission. 2 members of the Planning Commission were appointed last year to fill unexpired terms. Those 2 folks have indicated that they have an interest in continuing their service. There are 2 that we've also communicated with. We haven't heard back whether or not they're still interested in participating. And we informed them that if they did, we would like for them to submit a new application. That hasn't happened. I would like to have another opportunity to reach out to them and give them another chance to understand what their thoughts are about their service. That's for the Planning Commission. For BOZA, we have 2 folks that have been serving in that board for many years. We did not receive any applications from new members interested in serving in that capacity. I was talking to Douglas earlier about this particular group being somewhat different than all the others. They act as a quasi-judicial board. There is a lot of value in the historical knowledge and understanding of precedents as they evaluate cases moving forward. So our recommendation would be that those two, Mr. Carrick and Thornburg, are reappointed by this committee and city council to those seats. The other vacancy is related to the Code Board of Appeals. I think we've talked about this before. That group hasn't met in over 20 plus years. The reason why it existed was the city used to have the ability to issue variances to the building code. That changed over 20 plus years ago. So since then, they haven't met. The only reason this group would ever be necessary for them to meet is if somebody in the community has an appeal to Williams' interpretation of the code. The code is pretty black and white, so that's why we haven't had any reasons to assemble this group. It is, but I think it is included in state law and our code that we have this group. So one thing you may consider is just reappoint the current member, just knowing that, in all likelihood, it will never, they won't meet if history serves right. So I think I would focus your efforts on evaluating the candidates that we have for the planning commission, which we have received 3 applications for, and potentially 2 seats to fill.
So quick question. If we're leaving it open to Lisa Stafford and Ron Denton to decide whether or not they want to remain on this, what we're saying is we don't have any openings.
For the building code. No,
No,
sorry.
for the planning commission.
For the planning commission, sorry.
Yeah. So do we
Well,
want
I
to spend a lot of time evaluating candidates before we have the answer to?
That's not exactly right. What we're saying is there are 2 spots that per our unofficial, informal policy, unwritten policy, I will say, we would reappoint them because they were appointed for
To fill us.
less than 6 years.
Yeah, right.
They've served less than 6 years, less than 2 terms. The other 2 openings do meet that qualification where they have served for more than 2 terms, have served for more than 6 years. And so we would ask them to reapply. So those
Yeah, I
2
understand.
openings would be, so if they say we would like to reapply, then we would have 5 people vying for 2 openings.
So I understand.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, thanks for clarifying, because it's probably not just me, but so the first question would be, do we agree that those that fill vacant terms, short terms, Scott Pierce and Marty Brown, that should they choose to stay, we probably need an action to say we support them staying on this commission, right? The second piece is if Ron Denton and Lisa Stafford desire to stay, are we going to weigh them against the new candidates and make a decision where you would have 5 people that we're looking at,
Yes.
right? As opposed to 3 people that we're looking at.
Correct.
So if there's a motion that needs to come out of here, I would make a motion that we retain Scott Pierce and Marty Brown for this next term, since they stepped up to fill unexpired terms.
Second.
Well, I don't know if we need action on that today. I mean, that's.
Wait,
Yeah,
to be
I don't
clear,
think we do.
What you're,
Yeah.
the way you summed it up is exactly what's on the table right now. And we're merely waiting for the 2 reapplication seats, the two seats that will definitely be considered. We're waiting for those who are. in
So
those
then we're not
seats
doing
now.
anything today on this
There's
action.
no need for any action for the
Okay.
committee today.
You want to withdraw? I'll withdraw the motion as well.
But Scott and Marty have already indicated that they want to stay on though, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
they did.
That's why I was double check.
Yeah. So that takes the openings down to 2.
Yeah.
But we don't need to take action.
No.
Until we
what
get the
I-
whole group.
And Douglas is here today. What I would like for the committee to discuss is, you've had an opportunity to look at the 3 applicants that are interested in serving in the planning commission.
Yep.
That group is very, that's one that we always have people interested in serving. If we want to look at what the composition is of the current group, and
Yeah.
are there
Yes.
any
Yep.
needs
Yes.
that could, this would be a good opportunity to fill. So if you all want to hear from Douglas about what
course
those
we
needs
do.
may be.
Yeah.
Certainly this would be an opportunity to do that so that you can take that into your evaluation of the new candidates.
Well, so is the application period closed? First of all?
It is.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, hey, clarity. We don't have applications from the two existing members. So when you say the application period is closed, with the exception of the two,
I would give them another opportunity, a chance to submit if they.
how long?
It kind of feels like it needs to be open to the public for another week. I
We
don't,
can do that.
That's
certainly, yeah.
where I'm at, John. I don't think you can just choose these
Yeah.
two and say, you have a special privilege. It's open to the public for another week then.
We can advertise, give it another week and reach out to those two members. And
yeah. I would just ask you to communicate with these three that, hey, it's not like you are being considered.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. We can do that.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of the makeup, I might make it till we have all the applications. Not that I don't want to hear from Douglas, and I know, like, I can tell you off the gate, we don't have anybody from Wild Dunes on planning commission right now, as I understand. Am I right about that?
We do have one.
We have
Lisa,
one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lisa, what?
No,
David?
Are you sure?
didn't Steve Corn? Is he well? I think we do. I think.
Okay.
I
I thought
remember when you all considered applications last,
We were
that
trying
was
to
one of the criteria.
we were trying to get someone from Wild Dunes.
So I think
Yes,
it's- I think it's-
I remember it when we appointed
We still
Scott,
haven't met that.
when we appointed Scott and Marty, we felt like we were looking for someone from Wild Dunes, and neither of them were from Wild Dunes, which was,
Yeah.
they were fantastic. They were fantastic individuals, but not from Wild Dunes.
I'll have to check. I think we have one and he was after those two,
Yeah,
but I'm not positive.
Okay. okay,
Perfect.
sounds good.
Yes.
So we would expect to make movement on those positions next month.
That's correct.
Discussion of succession planning is our next topic of business.
All right, so we have been working on updating the succession plan. The city put together one, all department heads had worked on it several years ago. That has since been in need of updating. Recently, we have, as you all know, we had some challenges in the building department because of COVID. And it really highlighted the need for us to spend time identifying cross-training opportunities for that department and for City Hall as well, because we are such a, we're small departments. So some of the focus of the succession plan has been focused on that, for lack of a better word. You have a draft of the document that we've been, the working document. Janice has taken the lead in working through that with all department heads. We're in pretty solid ground with several departments, the recreation department, public works, police, have a very structured leadership, have a solid leadership structure that serves to meet the needs of operationally whenever there's a vacancy. We are moving forward with the fire department in the same capacity. City Hall and general government is one that there exists a new opportunity that I have been working through to make sure that our true needs are met by the current staff that we have. One opportunity that I see in the City Hall and building department is to have the building director serve in the role of building director plus a deputy administrator. Douglas has been with the city for a long time. Him and I, we work together very, very well. His strengths is something that I leverage and utilize a lot in specific projects, public services, infrastructure, drainage in particular. And him and I were kind of like a conversation about how to leverage both of our strengths to, again, meet the needs of the city. One, my proposal would be to have him act as not only the building director, but also as a deputy. So he would have the responsibilities and authority that the city administrator has in my absence. It provides an opportunity to hire a zoning administrator that would work under him in the building department, that would deal with more of the day-to-day duties of that role, and would open up some more time to Douglas to continue to help me in more of a project manager capacity. We have a lot of infrastructure projects going on. We have, we're moving forward with a master plan for drainage. That's something that's gonna certainly be a priority for the city moving forward. And my life and my work life would be a lot easier if I have somebody at that level helping me manage those projects. I do not need an assistant to draft letters for me or, deal with some of the day-to-day. That's something that I handle easily. I need help at a higher level, more of an executive role, where I can, we can split and conquer some of the duties that currently I'm doing by myself. Again, another thing that I want to leverage is just the historical knowledge that Douglas brings to the table. So we've developed a zoning administrator position, job description that we're working through. The idea would be to restructure City Hall as a full department. He would continue to oversee the building department from a higher level. And then the zoning administrator would report to him as in that capacity. The assistant administrator position would be sort of split in between in terms of the budgeted funds in making adjustments for the deputy position and the zoning administrator. So our goal would be to be neutral in terms of the expenses. That's my proposal. That's something that I hope that City Council supports. I've been thinking about this a long time and having conversations with Douglas about it as well. We really think that this would be a winning strategy for the city and our current needs.
Well, ironically, and not clearly as thought out as Desiree's version, but I brought this up to Desiree quite a while ago. And said, when I look across the city family, and I've said it over and over again, having Douglas's institutional knowledge that's been acquired over 20 years is a massive, massive asset to the city. And if I look across, and I've done tons of succession plans, I don't think it's possible to have a better plan than this plan, frankly. And without saying much else to it, I hope everybody else rallies around it, because I think it's a great idea.
I'm gonna say something that's horrible. But this is the way we've always done it. I hate the idea when people say, when we use the idea, it's like, we're doing it this way because we've always done it. And I like the idea that you took the initiative to, with change, with technology, with, things changing in the community, that we have to evolve with it as well. And I think it's a great idea. And I'm going through and looking at not only this department, the other departments as well. Just getting this ball rolling.
I don't have a lot more to offer, except that from a procedural standpoint, this is certainly related to succession planning, but it's also got a different flavor in that it's creation of new positions, both in terms of the deputy as well as the zoning administrator. Again, I understand how it's related, so I don't know if we need to take action today or if you're looking for us to take action, but it sounds like there's broad support from this committee for what you're proposing, which I think is probably what you're looking for is, hey, do you support this? Great work all around. I don't know if you know what you're signing up for. You're like, bring it on. I like it.
Well, I really do. I trust Douglas 1,000%. I think he brings great things to the city, and somebody that very sad to lose, and,
He can't, that's right, he cannot find an office where there's a surfboard. in it. So I mean, let's be realistic.
That's been a primary discussion point. What happens?
Yeah, what happens to the support? It's
Yeah.
definitely, we're kind of spot for that. So I appreciate the support. I mean, I just think that part of succession planning and having a
Mhm,
structure
certainly.
for, God forbid something happens to me, somebody that I trust and you all can trust equally, that will be able to make very thoughtful and smart decisions on behalf of the city. And I can't think of anybody better than Douglas for that. In terms of globally succession planning, that's continued to be a work in progress. In terms of, like I said, cross-training among other departments. Just wanted to show you what's been done so far, make sure that you all understand that this is something that we're working on. And again, any resources that may be necessary in the future, we'll be bringing them forward through city council. One of the components that I'll let Janice work through is a human capital plan. Looking at 15 years from now, what will the city's needs be at that point if our, let's say, police department calls for services continue to increase at the same rates that we have seen in the past couple of years? What are going to be our human capital needs at that point? And working through just like how we do with financial forecasting, doing the same with human capital. So Janice, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I've done this in the past, basically like forecasting and if you want to call it maybe the wish list. But looking at, the 1 to 5 department, for example, maybe, sorry, maybe there's, like she said, an extra need based on call volume, that we need more firefighters or we need more police officers, or maybe crime is increasing and we need more detectives. So there'd be a shift in that department area in special services. And it really helps open up the eyes and budgeting wise as well. And at the same time, we also create the job description so that everyone's on board. So you can just basically say, if there's an approval, you flip the switch and you move forward and post those positions. It's, we tweak, can be added, can be deleted, can be pushed out further. But I think it's a good source to be able to use, especially when you're at that time.
Yep, awesome.
No arguments.
So that's all we have.
It's good to be looking ahead instead of in the rear view. Right. Well done. Well, we don't have any items under new business, so I'll jump to miscellaneous. Any miscellaneous from committee members or staff? Our next meeting date is currently set for 9 a.m. on Tuesday, October 5th. I will probably not be able to make that. I'll probably have a baby. Might be in the hospital.
I think he's talking about needing to bring his wife here potentially.
So if we can punt that to the next week, I
No problem.
think we'll probably make that. I think we're going to be on time or early. So
I'll send.
Don't you have a plan?
Maybe the following Tuesday or Wednesday?
whatever works for
Yeah, I'm open.
for these guys.
I'm sure I'm open.
Okay, I'll send.
I'll double check those, right? But
I'm good on both of those
Yeah.
days.
Okay, I'll wait on you, Councilmember Roberto, and then I'll send a calendar invite and update the website.
Got it.
if you give
9
me
a.m. still
2
good, everyone?
seconds, I'll
Yep.
tell you right now. How's that? That date would be October.
October the 12th or the 13th.
I'm fine.
Wednesday, the 13th
Mhm.
at 9.
Okay.
Bags under my eyes.
Yeah.
More so than usual.
Been there.
Yeah. Okay, and no need for executive session. Any
Motion
other-
to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
All right.
Thank y'all.